Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm the Theorist. We're going to talk about the gender pay gap. Why women are getting 77 cents to every dollar a man makes, on average, in the United States of America. This is incredible. We still have inequalities in this modern day, especially in the country that champions liberty, freedom, the pursuit of happiness. This is how we're going to treat each other. Something is wrong. And what's most surprising for me is that there are people who are justifying this gap. Not to mention those who feel that women have no business in the workforce trying to do jobs like men, science and engineering and law. They really should be in the kitchen and the bedroom. But we're going to leave that issue aside. Let me just get to an issue that deserves a little more dialogue. I do think that the issue where people say, okay, there is a gender gap, but this gender gap is understandable because it's all dictated by the laws of economic. If women were as productive as men, then corporations will be hiring women more often than men. And I think that this kind of outlook overlooks the political realities that actually dictate the economic practices in our country. I mean, all we have to do is go as far back as the 1920s. In 1920, the 19th Amendment was ratified. All right, it was put into Congress around 1878, and it took years and years and years for people to realize that, listen, women are very serious about having a say as to who will be their political representatives, and through tireless work by women such as Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony, these women who sacrificed their lives and weren't really able to taste the spoils of their victory, should remind us that the voting rights that were won represents the kind of limitations and restrictions placed upon women in this country. And that wasn't it. I mean, women had to wait up until 1964 to have more legislative support for discriminations against them based on race and sex. And to tell you the truth, I mean, as an African American, 1964 is a big year for my people, if I can say. But more importantly, within that victory was the identification of a deeply rooted male bias in our country. In other words, the civil rights movement really directed legislative support for black men because men in general were understood to be the breadwinners. And so the women's issue was sort of put on the shelf, and women were very upset, and understandably so, and I do applaud them for pushing along in harmony with the other issues of concern during that day, race particularly. But women had to struggle during the 60s and the 70s, and the idea of having an equal rights amendment popped up in 1972, and that really still has a long way to go if it's going to go anywhere. But another date that's important is 1974, the Equal Credit Opportunity Commission, which was established for those creditors who were discriminating against people based on race, age, national heritage, and interestingly, sex and marital status. Can you believe that? My goodness. So women were basically economically oppressed in the society after gaining the right to vote, after gaining extra legislative support in favor of balancing gender and sex civil rights. So this should give us an idea of the kinds of political dynamics that were going on in our country, which needed to be corrected by legislation, because the political culture is so deeply rooted in our society. It was just a practice that went unlooked or unmediated, or people just ignored it and turned their face away from the issue. So my point is, if we look at these examples that I gave, the 19th Amendment, 1920, the Civil Rights Acts trying to correct further some of the discriminations going on in our country from race all the way up to sex and gender, and then this need for the 1974 Equal Credit Protection Act. This lets us know that while we might want to pretend that businesses are just looking for profit, we have to keep in mind that they are doing that within a set of unspoken rules, which are more or less played by those people who have the wealth and opportunity to bend the economic laws in the way they see fit, even if it means ignoring someone who, or a woman to be exact, who may be profitable to have on board. Again, this is not to ignore the fact that we have women who are excelling in many different realms of our society. We have great female entertainers, Beyonce, Rihanna, Madonna. We have political leaders out here now who are holding down the fort. Just to call a name, Hillary Clinton, and I'm not trying to say vote for her, but we have Hillary Clinton and Elizabeth Warren, for example, Condoleezza Rice, okay? And we have wealthy women, Martha Stewart and Oprah Winfrey, just throwing some names off the top of my head to show that I am, looking at this in a balanced way. Yes, we've made progress with respect to race and gender, but there's more work that needs to be done. So what should you do? What do I want you to think about? I want you to think about, especially women, think about those policymakers who are trying to push this agenda. Okay? None of our policymakers are perfect. Of course, they have to play the game a little bit, but right now, you have a chance to really push forward in the rights that you deserve. So I want you to think hard about who you want to vote for in November. These are issues that we have to settle at the ballot, or else stop complaining, as some people might say. It's always good to complain, but it's also good to show action, especially in the form of democratic practice. So get out there and vote for these issues. Get out there and vote for the people who are presently ready and understanding of the enormity of these issues, how they will affect children and future civilizations to come. See you soon. Bye.